questions, and also everyone here in the WebEx. But please put Q, capital Q, before the question, so that we can identify which one, which one is the question, which one is just comment or feedback. And feel free also to write. And also everyone here in the WebEx. But please put Q, capital Q. That's on YouTube. Yeah, feel free also to share some points or any resources that you find, good resources that you find, the link, whatever, in the chat box. Yeah. And I would strongly encourage all of you to be an active listeners, and use this opportunity to really clarify or ask any questions on the assessment that have been, at the back of your mind, or something that you are not really sure who to ask. Yeah. So really, this is a very good opportunity to have, our Professor Wong here to answer and to help us to clarify. Yeah. Okay, but we have about 60 plus something, and more will be coming. About 20 plus something also on the YouTube. I think that's good. I think this topic is always have a lot of interest for good reason. We'll be starting in 1 minute time. Just stand by. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sejahtera, selamat petang to all our participants, our own academics here from USM in the webinar WebEx session, and also to other participants listening and watching this session from YouTube, on YouTube. Yeah. This is a webinar series brought to you by Center for Development of Academic Excellence, or CDAE. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So this program is brought to you by CDAE, Pusat Pembangunan Kecemerlangan Akademik di USM. My name is Abdul Karim Alias, the director of CDAE. This program is part of our professional development program designed for our academic staff across 3 campuses. Okay, and we have 2 parts of the program. One is focusing on the pedagogy aspect, and the other one is on the integration of effective integration of technology or e-learning or online learning. So this afternoon, we are very privileged, very lucky to have our distinguished speaker here, Professor Dr. Wong Sulwan from University Putra, Malaysia. And she will be sharing with us on the topic of assessment on rubric. There will be 2 parts of this presentation because she want to make it short and sweet, short and concise, because it's fasting month, so attention span is usually very short, and people want to always start to think about what to prepare for the berbuka puasa, for the iftar, or which bazaar they want to go to get some food. So there's a lot of distraction in our mind nowadays. So we will make it short. So the second part, I hope you do not miss the second part tomorrow, as a continuation of this. So let me first very quickly and briefly introduce Professor Wong Sulwan. Professor Wong is a professor at the Faculty of Educational Studies, University Putra Malaysia, UPM. Currently, she is a Deputy Dean of Graduate Studies and International Graduate Studies and International at the Faculty of Educational Studies. She has more than 20 years of teaching experience in educational technology, teacher education, and teaching methods, and regularly conducts teaching and learning related training courses for academics. She is also an active and passionate researcher and has published more than 2,000 scholarly papers with a special focus on teaching and learning. Her Scopus Age Index is 17. Dr. Wong is currently the editor-in-chief of UPM's flagship journal Pertanika, Journal of Social Sciences and Humanities. This is actually Scopus Index. I think Pertanika, I guess it is the same Pertanika. There's only one Pertanika journal, right, Prof. Wong?
There's one, but under Pertanika we have three different areas.
Oh,
so mine would be
okay.
under social sciences.
All right, all right. Oh, okay. That's very good. And this is good information for those from the social sciences and humanities area. Pertanika is Scopus Index, and I'm not sure about Pertanika Journal of Social Sciences and Humanities, but the other one is on the agriculture itself. I think agricultural
Correct. That's
sciences.
right.
That is, I would say, very well known. And although I have not published anything there, but I have reviewed quite a number of papers there as well. Right. So without further ado, so thank you very much. I forgot to thank Prof. Wong. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and I hope you would consider to offer more topics on assessment or on any other topics on related to teaching and learning for our CDA program. Boleh ya, Prof. Wong ya?
Thank you. Thank you.
So without further ado, I'll pass the screen to you, Prof. Silakan.
Thank you, Prof. Karim. Thank you so much for inviting me for this session. Thank you, everyone, for joining me this afternoon. It's such a great pleasure to be invited by USM, and I'm excited to be part of the CDAE's program. And this is my email, just in case if you'd like to contact me to consult me or to ask me about Pertanika issues and so forth, please do. This is my this is where I'm attached to. I've been here for more than 20 years with UPM, and let's get started. Now, the ABCs of rubrics for assessment, and I think the ones that was introduced by Prof. Fauzia, she did the session, yeah, assessment for the soul. I believe she must have actually talked about rubrics. I would say this session would be continuation of where she actually left off with when she finished her webinar. And I hope you take the opportunity, and I believe some of you would have joined her session. And if you haven't, then it would be good for you to go through the YouTube session with Prof. Fauzia, and then perhaps this session would be more meaningful to you. And as explained by Prof. Karim, this session is for the beginners. I decided that I wanted to break my session into two, keep it under 1 hour so that it's not too much for you, not too heavy, and it would be something that you can grasp very quickly. And that's the reason why I decided that the title of this webinar would be ABCs of Rubrics for Assessment. What is the ultimate goal of the session would be to equip you with rudimentary knowledge, the very basic knowledge of rubrics. I strongly believe that many of you would have used rubrics, even if you're not aware that that's a rubric. I remember when I was teaching in school, I was a school teacher before, we always use schema permakahan, or the scoring scheme, or the schema, the term that is usually used in school. We didn't use the term rubric. But as we go up to the higher education level, rubrics become this term. It's a widely used term in education. And I have been using rubrics for many years now, and I really like the idea of using rubrics. And I believe that it would be very useful to you as well. I have two learning outcomes for today's session. It's a very short session. It's going to be less than 1 hour. The first one is to differentiate the various types of rubrics. You may have used rubrics, yeah, but you may not be aware that we have two rubrics, two types of rubrics. The first is the analytics rubrics, and the other one is holistic rubric. Then the second learning outcome would be to evaluate the suitability of rubrics for the intended assessment task. How do you decide which rubric would be useful to your learning assignment? How do you decide when you are going to design your learning activities, yeah, which rubric would be suitable? That's my two learning outcome for today's session. And for the course content, very short. I only have three contents. The first one is for you to get to know rubrics. What is the definition of rubrics? Then would be the types of rubrics. I mentioned before that we have analytics as well as the holistic rubric. Now, there are actually more than two rubrics available, but the most popular one, if you Google types of rubrics using that as your keyword, you probably will see that the hits or the return on Google most likely will point you to analytic as well as holistic rubric. And the last part would comprise criteria, performance indicators, and the rating scales. Now, these are the components of the rubric. I'll show you the anatomy of the rubric for analytic rubric as well as the holistic rubric. They look quite similar, but they are different in the sense that one is for, if you can say that the analytic rubric will be suitable if you are doing formative assessment, and holistic rubric is usually used for the summative assessment. Before we go into what is a rubric, I think it's important for me to share with you what is the purpose of using rubric. I'm sure whatever that we do, whatever that we use, yeah, there's always a purpose. First of all, the use of rubrics is actually for us to assess performance. That's what our key idea of using a rubric, or when you give assignments or you give learning activities, we want to monitor our students' progress. How much have they learned? How well have they been able to apply the knowledge, for example, in the classroom into the real world? So that would be authentic assessment, authentic learning environment. Yeah. And then what I need to emphasize here would be it aligns with the learning outcome. I'm sure all of us are familiar with LOs, the outcome-based education. Whatever learning activity that you design must align with the learning outcome of your course. You all have your synopsis kursus, right? And you have maybe 3 to 4 learning outcomes that you need to achieve for your course. While you have this in for your preparation, for your class preparation, you would then start to design your learning activity. So your learning activity, but is then you need to grade or you need to score the performance of your students. That's when rubric comes into play. It's very important. Now, the LO is indicated by performance. Now, in layman terms, when you talk about performance, it actually means something like the things that your students are able to do. What is it that they're able to do? The students are able to make or create. What is it that they're able to say, or even what is it that they are writing? So this is in a very layman term when we talk about performance. Next would be, what's the benefit? What do I gain as an educator or an instructor? What do I gain from using these rubrics? Now, it is not just for the instructor, but it also benefits your student. That is something that I want to emphasize here. I have prepared these 6 benefits that your student as well as you as the instructor would gain when you actually use rubrics. The first benefit is to support authentic assessment. I have mentioned earlier about the word authentic. This is where you will be able to know whether your learners are able to apply knowledge in a real world context. It reflects how much or how well your learners or your students are able to apply the knowledge that they gain in the classroom in the real world context or outside the classroom. That is where rubrics plays an important role. The second benefit would be communicate expectations. What do you mean by that? Now, my experience tells me is that when you give your assignment to your students, yeah, chances are students would ask a lot of questions. What does this assignment actually require? What is the expectations the lecturers have for me to get a good grade? It means that it gives learners ideas of what is expected of them. It is especially useful when the rubrics are communicated to the learners before they are assessed. What I noticed before I started using rubrics, I had a very general rubric, so I didn't give it to my students, at the start of the semester. And I noticed that my students had a lot of questions because when they start reading the assignments or the learning activities, they do not know where do they start? What do I require them to do? There will be a lot of questions in that sense. And because of what I have experienced, I decided that whenever at the start of the semester, I would make it a point that in the first week, the first day I meet my students, I would give them the assignment and also I would hand them the rubrics. And I'll tell the class that this is the rubrics that you will be graded against. That would give them an idea of what are the expectations, what do they need to do, how do they start this assignment. If your students still have questions about the assignment that you have prepared for them, it means that what is indicated in the learning activity may not be so clear, but the rubric will help the students to identify what are the important elements to have in their assignment. That's why I think it's very important that you prepare your rubrics early and hand it together with the assignment. This is based on my experience. And I find that when you give the rubrics at the very early stage of your semester, there will be very much less question from your students because they have the questions for the learning activities. They also have the rubrics. For number 3, improve performance. Now, this is where the students, they would have the opportunity to improve. Explicit criteria and performance level descriptions allows the learners to understand the desired performance. It's all very objective. It's all very clear what is expected that they need to prepare, what they need to create, for example. And at the same time, the learners are able to assess themselves. Now, self-assessment is a very important aspect of learning. When they look at the assignment and they look at the rubrics say you need to have 5 graphics in order for you to gain a score of 4 marks, for example. Then they will assess and see, oh, I only have 3. I need to find some more. If I have videos, then I will get more marks, for example. They make it in a point that they are clear of what is expected of them and how do they improve their performance. So this is very important, benefit number 3. For benefit number 4, provide informative feedback. Now, when I actually do the learning, I give them the learning, the assignments and the learning activities. I grade them. I don't grade them in a sense that, okay, you get 68 for this assignment and that's it. But they are given the opportunity to improve. This translates into more work for me because I need to grade, I need to check the assignments. So I'm going to show you an example of one assignment that I used from last semester's class, and I'm going to explain to you what transpires throughout the semester. Week 1, I give them the assignment, and then I give them the rubric. By week 6, I'm going to start monitoring them. I actually start monitoring them from the very beginning. But by week 6, they will get some feedback from me. They actually get some scores from me. But that score is not the final score. It means that the students have the opportunity to improve their assignment. And then once they get feedback from me, why did they get 4 marks for this criteria? Why did they get 5 marks for the second criteria and so forth? They are given time to do improvement. And then by week 14, they hand out the final assignment, which means that you're doing constant monitoring. And having the rubrics actually helps the students very, very much. Benefit number 5 would be promote thinking and learning. Now, when you actually give them the rubric, they read through what is the criteria, what is the characteristics of the learning performance, the performance descriptors. Now, these are all the keywords that I'm going to explain to you, what it means when we talk about rubrics. Learners are able to review and revise their work, thus reflecting their learning experiences. They start to think, what do I need? How many more graphics do I need to add? What kind of graphics would actually give me more marks? What kind of video would I need to prepare, for example? So it makes them to start thinking, so that the thinking process is very important. It is not just about grades. It is not just about grades. I think Prof. Karen mentioned earlier, it's not about CPD marks, but what you are going to gain from this session today. And point number 6, the last benefit is to ensure fairness. I think I like this one because I noticed when I give the rubrics to the students, hardly any students will come up to me and ask me, why did they score low? Why did I get low for this criteria? It's very objective. Everything is all stated there. Why you got 6 is because you have this in your assignment. This helps avoid dispute between learners and instructors. Very, very seldom. I think I have not had any cases ever since I started using rubrics in my class where students would ask for grade review and so forth. It's very clear to them why they scored 70, why they scored 60, for example. These are the benefits of using rubrics. There are actually more, like I mentioned before. There are 6 main benefits for you as an educator as well as for your learners. Now, what is a rubric? We've talked about the benefits, we've talked about the purpose, yeah? Now, what is the definition of a rubric? What exactly is a rubric? It is a tool. It is a tool that comprises a set of criteria with possible levels of performance quality. Now, this term, which I have actually highlighted in red fonts, yeah, are the keywords that you are going to be seeing in this session. And I will show you the components of the rubric, which comprises the criteria as well as performance quality. Some, in your reading, you may have come across words like performance descriptors, performance indicators. They actually refer to the same thing, yeah? And developed to assess any kind of student's work from written to oral to visual. And this is from Brookhart 2013. I really like her book. Yeah, I'm going to share with you the title of her book, and you can explore the book. Yeah, it's a very thin book actually, but packed with all the information that you need to know about rubrics. That's definition of rubrics. And I also mentioned about performance. You are measuring performance. What do you mean by performance? Performance can be divided into 2, processes or products. Processes, I think you would agree with me, is more important than product. What do you mean by types of performance from the perspective of processes? It could be in the physical skills, it could be the use of equipment, it could be oral communication, it could be work habits. And some of the examples for these processes, maybe if you're teaching students from the music department, you will want to assess how well the student is able to play the guitar, how well the student is able to play the piano. If you have physical education students in your class, perhaps then you want to find out how will they be able to do a forward roll, how well, what is the process in that sense, yeah? For science students, maybe from the laboratory, yeah, preparing a slide for the microscope, drama student making a speech to the class, and so forth. These are some examples of what we mean by processes. The second one is product, something which is tangible, something that you can see and touch. It could be a constructed object. It could be a written essay, teams, reports, term papers. It could be other academic products that demonstrate understanding of concepts. And these are the examples that you can actually produce, your students can produce. Wooden bookshelves, set of welts, handmade apron, watercolor painting, and so forth. These are the types of performance that we measure when you want to use your rubric. And for tomorrow's session, we are going to learn how to create a rubric. I'm going to walk you through the processes. For today's session, it is just introductory, getting you to know rubrics, the types of rubrics, and why do we use rubrics. I have mentioned earlier that there are two types of rubrics. There are actually more, but the ones that I want to emphasize for today's session would be analytic rubric as well as holistic rubric. And for tomorrow's session, I would zoom into analytic rubric. They look quite alike. They could be transformed. If you have an analytic rubric, you can transform it into a holistic rubric. If you have a holistic rubric, you can actually transform it into an analytic rubric. An analytic rubric, it has criteria, it's very detailed. That's why it is good for your assessment if it's in the form for formative assessment. Students will be able to improve whatever that you have given them for your learning activities. They will know specifically which criteria am I weak at, which criteria should I improve. So the analytic rubric would be suitable for that sense. Holistic rubric is usually used when you are giving some kind of summative assessment. One short grade, no more improvements. Students get 70% and that's it, they are great. They have no more opportunity to improve their assignment. When we design our learning activity, you have to decide, should I be using an analytic rubric or should I be using a holistic rubric? That will be covered for tomorrow's session. Now, this is how an analytic rubric look like. So I've used the word anatomy. The components of an analytic rubric is a two-dimension diagram here. Why do I say it's two-dimension? It's because we have the criteria, which is on the left-hand side. And then you have the desired performance descriptors, or other terms would be performance quality or performance indicator. And what you have at the top here is the rating scales. What I have prepared for you in this very simple table, I have 3 criteria and I have 3 rating scale. My rating scale is in low, moderate, high. I've also attached some scores to it. 0 to 5% would be in the low category, 6 to 10 moderate, 11 to 15% high. It really depends on you. Do you want to give scores for your rubric? Maybe not. You just want to tell your student, okay, you are at this moderate category and you need improvement. Then you will do away with the scores that you have. But if you want to give some scores, just to let them know how they are doing, then you can just insert some scores here. For the criteria here, how many criteria? That would also depend on what is it that you want to measure. It depends on the content that you are covering, for example. It requires expertise in your area as well for these desired performance descriptors. Performance descriptors is the hardest part to write or to prepare for a rubric. But once you have it done, you have it prepared, I can tell you your marking is going to be so systematic, you will be able to do very fast marking. That's why I really like using rubrics. It's just that the preparation that you put in at the very beginning to get your rubric ready takes quite a bit of time. The row represents the criteria. this is what I mean. The rows. So I have 3 rows here. For the desired performance, while the column, these are my columns, represents the evaluation score. And under the rating scale, corresponding weights or scores can be assigned. The performance descriptors are explicitly stated. You state very clearly what is it, the characteristics of the performance. Remember, the performance could be process or could be product. This is an example of a learning activity or assignment that I actually gave to my student last semester. I teach educational technology. It's a compulsory course for all Bachelor of Education students at my faculty. And the students learn about technology. How do they use technology for education? This course is taught by 4 lecturers. When you have more than 1 lecturer teaching the same course, I think rubrics also come in it plays a very important role in the sense that how do you ensure the standardization for marking? I could be, I perceive things differently. Everybody perceives things differently. With the existence of the rubric, you can ensure there's consistency in marking. That's very important. We don't want group 1 who is taught by another colleague all get A. But because I'm very strict, then probably not many would get A. But with the existence or the use of rubric, that would not happen because we have a set of criteria to follow. We have a set of performance indicators that would help us to decide whether we want to grade the students. Is this 5 marks? Does this student, is it getting 1 mark would be adequate? That would help us in that sense, yeah? For this assignment, it is an e-portfolio. The students are required to create an e-portfolio. It's an individual assignment throughout the semester. Students are going to use any types of platform. They could use a Blogspot, Wix, yeah. In the portfolio, the students are required to post updates and progress of their project and write reflections based on the activities done throughout the semester. They have to update at least once a week, and they can update as many times as they wish. The weightage for this assignment is 10%. The deadline to submit is week 14. This assignment is given in week 1. They have a lot of time, whole 14 weeks of the semester, to work on their e-portfolio. And students are required to upload the URL. They have to give me the URL by week 2. Putra Blast is our learning platform in UPM. Why is it that I require them to give me their URL by week 2? Is because I really go in and check. Are they actually working on this blog? Are they working on this e-portfolio? What have they actually put in? That would keep them on their toes. Otherwise, you would see that the students would do one shot in week 14. We do not want that because we want to monitor their learning progress. We want our students to be able to improve their work and to acquire the necessary skills that we have set for the learning outcome, the LO. This way, by monitoring, it translates to more work for me, definitely, as the educator. Each semester, I have about 40 students. I have to go through 40 blocks, one by one. But I think the satisfaction for me is that the students put in as much effort as I do in doing this assignment because they know they have to get all this done every week. They can't be doing it at one shot, one lump sum at the end. They won't learn anything if they do that, yeah? That is the whole idea of why I monitor my students. Going back to this e-portfolio assignment that I have, then myself and the course coordinator, we sat down to develop the rubrics. This is one example of the rubrics. Actually, we have more. We have more criteria on the left-hand side, but I just show you 3 criteria here. This is an example of an analytic rubric. Why is it an analytic rubric? Is because we decided that this assignment, students will have the opportunity to improve. If there's lacking in some kind of criteria, they can improve. They are given time to find more materials to put into their rubrics. Now, let's look at the criteria. On the left-hand side is number 1, communication of reflection. Number 2, content knowledge. And number 3, how much effort the student has put in for this assignment. Now, I'm going to admit that this is not a perfect rubric. Why is it so? I will show you that there is a little bit of flaw in this rubric. The rubric is a process, yeah? It's an ongoing process. When you first develop your rubric, don't expect it to be perfect in the first time. You will learn, you will see that, oh, there are some flaws here, I need to improve and so forth. At the same time, the students may give you feedback. They think that there are certain criteria that should be in the rubric. Take note of their comments from your student. You'll be surprised that students really participate in this whole process. Now, there was one time when I was teaching another course, and I was late in giving the rubrics. I had one student who sent me a message and said, "Can you share with me your rubric?" I didn't expect that from my student, in the sense that your student actually would know that when you are given learning activities, they would expect rubrics. I was quite surprised with that question, in fact, but I told the student that I will be giving you as soon as I complete the rubric. It was a new course that I was teaching. That means that I didn't have much materials all prepared. I was doing it as the semester was unfolding. Now, going back to our analytic rubric, yeah, I mentioned there are 3 criteria. And you look at my rating scale at the top here. I have 4 rating scales: adequate, developing, competent, and excellent. If students fall in this excellent category, they would earn 4 marks. And how do they actually earn 4 marks here? It's when their reflection shows originality. It's very comprehensive in that sense. The learner is able to generate new ideas from the learning activity. They include examples and supporting evidence like pictures, videos. They include caption. They explain appended materials. That would be 4 and shows that student is excellent in that sense of communication of reflection. But when you compare with a student who was awarded 1 mark, just adequate, learner is merely reporting and summarization of events. They're just regurgitating, meaning muntah balik lah. There's no reflection. It doesn't show any originality. What you give in class is exactly what you see in the e-portfolio. That would be some very, very low grade answers from your students, and that would be in the category of 1 mark. And you would also notice that the performance indicators gets more complex as you cut across from left to right, from adequate to excellent. In that sense, it means that when you prepare your rubric, the rubric must be in the ascending order or descending order. They must be showing some degree, some progression. Then you will be able to say, hey, this is a good rubric. Now, just now I mentioned that this rubric is not that perfect after all. Let me show you the flaw or the weakness of this rubric. If you look at the effort criteria here, portfolio has less than 14 updates, which means that the student didn't update the portfolio every week. You get only 1 mark. Then for developing, 2 marks, portfolio has at least 14 updates. And then there's a sudden jump, yeah, to competent. It says portfolio has some additional updates that somewhat reflects the learning activities and journey. It doesn't say that it needs at least 14 updates. You see there's a disconnection or disjointment in terms of the scale. By right, there should have been this word here. This sentence should be inside this column. It starts with portfolio has at least 14 updates or more, then continue with portfolio has some additional updates that somewhat reflects the learning activity and journey. This means that if I had actually cut and paste this sentence into here, as well as excellent, then you will see that there's a degree or there's some progression in that descriptors. This is what I mean by a good rubric. But like I said, this was the first rubric that we developed for this activity. So every semester we will all sit down, the instructors, I'm sure you do the same thing as well. The learning activity changes every semester. We don't give the same learning activity, and we create new rubrics. But at the same time, we also do some improvement, and then maybe we give the same activity but with some improvement, and that means that your rubrics should also be an improved version. This is an analytic rubric. This is from the internet. I just want to show to you how a rubric can be more complex. Why do I say that this is a more complex rubric? Is because if you look at this criteria on the left-hand side, this is a rubric for lesson plan. I'm sure all of you are familiar with lesson plan. We all are educators. We need to prepare our lesson plan. When you actually need to assess a lesson plan, these are some of the criteria that you need to have in your lesson plan. What are the objectives or the learning outcome? What are the instructional strategies reflected in the lesson plan? What kind of assessment will be used in the teaching? And you see that each of these criteria is assigned a weightage. 15%, 40%, 15%, and so forth. This indicates that the most important criteria would be this: instructional strategies. That makes up the bulk of the lesson plan. And that's why we have allocated 40% of the whole assignment to just instructional strategies. This is an example of a rubric which is more complex as the one that I showed you earlier. And you will see that the rating scales here, I have beginning, developing, accomplished, and exemplary. And these are the scores: 0 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20. And then there is this summation here. And you have the total. Let's look at the last criteria: organization and presentation. It just makes up 5%, yeah? Compared to a student who is considered as beginning. It's a really beginner for the lesson plan. They don't have much knowledge and didn't prepare a really good lesson plan for you. You would give between 0 to 5. Lesson plan is unorganized and not presented in a neat manner. You have a range to play around with the scores. Maybe student A, you want to give 2 marks. Then you see student B, well, still beginning, not so good yet, but better than student A. So student B gets 4 marks, perhaps. That is how you are going to use the rubric to grade or to give or award marks to your student. And when the student asks you, why did I get so low marks for organization and presentation? And you say, hey, it's obvious your lesson plan is so unorganized. It's not presented in a neat manner. If you had given me a lesson plan which is well organized in a very professional fashion, then you would have scored above 16 perhaps, or even 16 or 20. That is what we mean by objectivity in your rubrics. They would be very sure, yeah, they are very clear why they scored 20, why they scored 5, why they scored 10. It's because it's all explicitly stated in your rubrics. This is another example of an analytic rubric. Now, let's look at the next slide. I mentioned about analytic rubric. The second rubric that I want to introduce here is holistic rubric. If you still recall the first table that I showed you, now the table has changed into a one-dimensional table. Why is it one-dimensional? Is because your rating scales have come to the left. And students now are given the scores of 0 to 15, 16 to 20, 21 to 30%. And if you score between 0 to 15, you will be in the category of low. And your descriptors now are in these cells. So the combined, the keyword here is combined desired performance descriptors. all the descriptors are combined. There are no more criteria here. You realize that? On the left-hand side earlier in the analytic rubric, you have criteria 1, criteria 2, criteria 3. I don't have it anymore in the holistic rubric. It's because all the criteria is summed up here. I'm going to show you what I mean by that, yeah? It comprises the rating scale, which is the corresponding weights or scores which to be assigned in the row, while the combined desired performance descriptors are placed in the column. Going back to the assignment that I gave to my student, let's say I decided that no, I'm not going to be using analytic rubrics for this assignment. I'm going to give a one-shot grade. You get 60, that's it. No chance or no opportunity for you to improve your assignment. Then I'm going to use a holistic rubric. How would a holistic rubric look like? This is how it looks like. It has changed in a sense that now I don't have the criteria anymore on the left-hand side, but the scales, the rating scales are here. If you score 49% or below, you are considered as adequate. Why are you adequate in that category? Because you are only merely reporting, summarizing the events. You show limited ability to connect to the theories of diffusion of innovation, and the portfolio has less than 14 updates. You realize that I have combined all the performance descriptors into just one row. This is what we mean by a holistic rubric. As you progress to the bottom, you have developing, competent, and excellent. And once again, I need to emphasize that this is usually used when you are going to do a summative assessment. The student is given a grade, they don't have opportunities to improve their assignments anymore. That brings us to the last slide. What are the key takeaway points for today's session, which is, I'm sure it's a very short session. Yeah, like Prof. Karim said, short and sweet. Not going to give you anything heavy, but I think I would expect you to be able to grasp the fundamentals of rubrics. Number one, key points is that rubrics is for you to assess performance. Performance is indicated in the form of process or product. That's very important. Which do you choose? Sometimes you say, okay, I'm going to measure the student's process. Process is important for this particular learning activity that I have designed. Sometimes you say that product would be better. I would be able to see what the students created, for example. That's number one. Number two, there are two types of rubrics, analytic and holistic. And if you go back one step further, the definition of rubric, it is just a tool for you, not only for you as an educator, but as well as for your learners. I believe that the benefits would cut across for all learners and educators. And I think what is more important for me is it benefits my student more rather than to me, because it gives them the opportunity to identify which part is it that they are going to be given the opportunity to improve. What do they need to do to acquire the competence according to the LO that you have decided? And this is the book that I mentioned to you earlier. Susan Brookhart. She's so famous. Yeah, she is, I think, would be the guru of rubrics. And the book is so thin, it is nothing heavy. It's not like those thick references books, you know. You have a very thin book in, I think it's B5 size. How to Create and Use Rubrics for Formative Assessment and Grading by Susan Brookhart. Get this book if you want to know more about rubrics. I really love her book and highly recommend her book. And there are also references that I actually need to credit for these slides that I have, O'Reilly as well as Royal. So there are many actually references available. These were the ones that I used for my preparation for this slide. And I think if any of you are interested to have my slide, you can email me. I think I can also share with Prof. Karim, yeah? If you can actually directly get it from CDAE. With that, I thank you so much for your attention. I think I have done it below 1 hour, is how I promised. And I'm going to, should I stop sharing or should I just keep it on the screen?
Yeah, just keep it prop, just in
Okay.
case you need to refer to some of the slides. So thank you very much, Prof. Wong. That's really short and very sweet. Not suitable for diabetic patient, I guess, because very sweet. All right. So yeah, I think it's good that we have short and sweet. I think we can digest most of it. It's very basic, very fundamental, but I believe, well, I would say many of our academics still uh, do not have a proper understanding, even the fundamental of it, especially those from non-education background. So this is really, really good. Really appreciate it, Prof. Wong. So let's pick up some questions. We start from the top. Okay, we have one from Dr. Ahmad Lutfi here. Okay, at 3:17 p.m., I usually share my rubrics to students, but in vetting procedure, I'm not sure whether to tell the other whether it is highly recommended or a must for them to include the rubrics to students. Is it actually a must?
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ahmad Lutfi, for your question. It is not a must. I have colleagues who decided, no, I'm not going to share my rubrics for some reason. And it really depends on you. Nobody is there to say that, hey, this is compulsory. It's a must that you must share your rubrics. But based on my experience, it's students gain more by the instructors sharing the rubrics because they have a better expectations of what is required for the assignment. That is why it's my practice that I make it a point that each time I give the learning assessment of the learning activity to the students in week 1, then it comes with a rubric. It depends on you, really. That would be my answer. But I highly recommend it to share with your students.
Yeah, okay. I think I've heard some arguments that by revealing the details of what we expect, that kind of restrict or restrain the creativity of the students. I don't understand why such an argument, but personally, I agree with you, Prof. Wong, that we want to set the expectation very clearly to the student, crystal clear as to how they would assess. But what's your comment on that? I mean, some people say it limits creativity. In what way? I'm not very sure.
Thank you, Prof. Karim. You really, that's a really good question. Now, there are reasons why some people or some educators do not want to share the rubrics at the very beginning because it kind of restrict the creativity, because students, when they get something and their mind is that, okay, I need to work just within these parameters of the rubrics, I can't go beyond, and
Yeah.
that actually kills their creativity. And that is one of the main reasons why lecturers or educators are worried about sharing their rubrics. And when students, we say A, they just move A. So if you say that this is 5 marks and this is how much you're gonna get, and that's it, they are going to follow exactly what you state there. But based on my experience, I think it's the benefits of sharing the rubrics, yeah, outweighs
Mm,
the cons in that sense.
yeah.
And I notice my students, they don't really actually just follow exactly, they do more. I'm so
Mm,
impressed, really. Seriously, when I was actually giving my assignment, the assignment to create blogs, I was dealing with a group of pendidikan jasmani students, no knowledge in technology at all. And I asked my friend, I asked my colleague, I said, do you think my students will be able to do this course successfully, complete it successfully? She said, don't worry, because she was actually handling this course quite many years, and I was just assigned to teach the course. I was so worried about my students. But to my surprise, these students from physical education, those really athletic kind of students, they produce really good assignments, beautiful videos. They did the editing so well, something that I did not imagine that they would actually be able to produce. They had actually surpassed my expectations, and what they produced actually surpassed what I had required them to do in the rubrics. But what I think benefited them is that they were sure of what are the criteria required, what do they need to do. And they didn't ask me many questions. I expected many questions, but they didn't. I believe strongly that the rubrics played a very important role in that sense.
And maybe one way to address that concern, maybe we can always tell or encourage the students to go beyond,
Yes.
to go beyond what is in the rubric. If 5 is excellent, so go beyond that. So that, get them to, or encourage them to unleash their creativity, and not just limiting themselves, to that rubric, right?
Exactly, I agree with you. We have to encourage, we have to play an important role to tell them just don't follow exactly, but think out of the box.
Okay, that's good. That's good. A very good point made by Prof. Wong. So let's pick up another one from Dr. Radia here, Radia Yusuf here. Will many students score much better if they are given the works they had done? What are the chances of many scoring B and above? What happens to the infamous bell curve? Can you find the question at 3:19
All
p.m.?
right. What happens to the bell curve? Now, the bell curve will be there still. When I look at my the scores that when I key in, our system will show us the bell curve. Well, the bell curve is still there because it doesn't mean that students are going to get all A's. 30% of my students score A minus and above. There are still students who would score B plus, B, and so forth. Don't worry whether it will skew your graph. I don't believe that. Never. But what we want from our student is that they learn. They learn from this course how to apply it in their real life when they go back to schools. And based on my experience after teaching this particular course, educational technology, this is the 3rd semester I'm teaching. I still have a bell curve, still a normal curve.
Okay, let's for the sake of discussion, Prof. Wong, what if you don't get a bell curve? Should we change or modify the rubric, or stop giving the rubric?
I don't think we should do that. If you don't get a bell curve and you get a skew and showing that the students are really, so many of them are getting A's, it means that they are learning and they have actually achieved the learning outcome. And I think it's something that I should be really proud of myself, that I have been able to bring them from zero knowledge to something which is A. So
Prof,
don't
I
change
wish the power. I wish the powers that be are listening to what both of you are saying, because in our experience we had to correct the damn thing to lower the numbers of A minus and A, so that we have the beautiful bell curve.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess the honors is on you, Dr. Odi, to really fight and make your point very clear, and really stand for your decision. Well, I've done that. I remember at least once, but not for my course, but defending for my colleagues. Yeah, I don't believe in this case normalizing the curve, not flatten the curve, but normalizing the curve. That's such to me, putting students, and victimizing them, for that. All right. Okay, let's not argue and dwell on that. But that's, I think Prof. Wong has made it very clear that we should make the rubric available. If the rubric is done well, we should still get a bell curve, because people are different. Students will put different effort, and so on. So I guess. All right. So let's go to the next questions. At 3:28 there from Dr. Muhammad Fadli. If student can work again on their assignment after we mark them, is it possible for them to improve their grade from C to A within the given period? Is this fair to students that obtain A grade on first try compared to other students that have the chances to improve their grade from C to A, for example? You get the question, Prof. Wong?
Okay. I have had this experience as well. There were some students at the first try, they got A. Very good. And your question, Dr. Muhammad Fadli, would be, would it be fair to students who got a C and then they finally get an A? What I usually do is that students who get an A in the first place, they're going to get bonus mark from me to show that I appreciate their effort in getting it right and putting so much effort in the first place. But I would not penalize the student in the sense that just because you got C and then you jump to A, for me, it's a celebration for me. They have actually taken my course seriously and they put in so much effort and they do actually deserve the A at the end of the course. But so far, I have not had the experience where the students are able to jump from C to A. No. The ones that they have C, they probably went up to B, maybe B plus, but not directly to A. So far, no.
Okay, Dr. Muhammad Fadli, are you happy with that answer? Are you, or you want to just unmute microphone if you want to ask for more clarification there? I can sleep well tonight. Okay, that's good. So all this while you don't sleep well. Wow, that's too bad. Too bad. Okay, good. At least some positive outcome from the program today. Okay, I think in relation to that, maybe I think the next question by Dr. Radia again, probably related. Will many at 3:19 p.m. Will many students score much better if they are given the chance to modify the works they had done? What are the chances of many students scoring B and above? What happens to the infamous bell curve? Lecturers had been asked why let the students make correction after their works had been assessed because their grades become better. Okay, never mind. I have my own comment on that. But maybe Prof. Wong can take it. It's your session, my session.
Tadi Prof Wong dah jawab kan, so I understand now. So
Yeah.
I will blast the video.
Yeah. But that mindset, Prof. Wong, can you deliberate a little bit? That mindset that I thought we want to get the students to improve, right? That's
Exactly.
all what formative assessment is about.
Yes, yes. I think based on my experience in UPM, if all the students, let's say 50%, I have had, this is another course that I taught previously, 50% of the students scored A. When we go for the Mashwarat Marka, I have to defend my marks, but I write a note there and I defend that, well, the students have already achieved the competency. They have achieved the LO. Why do we need to penalize them and bring them down to another grade, which is so unfair?
Yeah.
And so far, I have never been asked to remark or to reduce the marks to that extent. I have personally been very happy with the outcome and no questions raised after I defended my work.
Yeah, so you must make your point very clear and very compelling that, I would not downgrade, the students because these are the things, these are the facts. So have to make it very clear. Okay. Bergerak dia, keep this one, keep on moving. Okay, next one. Okay, from question from YouTube at 3:46. For courses such as final year project and integrated design project, which involve many examiners, is there any specific rubric criteria as compared to courses involve only one examiner?
No, there won't be different rubrics. It will be the same. Even if I have taught my class this particular educational technology course, if I had been handling it alone, the rubric would have been the same. There won't be any difference if you're handling it with 4 other colleagues or more than 10 lecturers. The rubric will still be the same. The expectations are still the same. The criteria will be still the same.
There should be a common one, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, right. Next one at 3:47. This one a question from YouTube also. Can we change the rubric in the mid of semester to adapt to student progress and changes in the assignment? Oh, okay, this is a good question, I guess. Can we change midway?
Can we change? I wouldn't say we won't be able to change. It depends on how students are progressing in that sense. If you have a group of students, for example, who has no knowledge at all and they are so poor in that performance, perhaps it makes sense for you to modify a little bit your rubrics. I believe that things are always changeable. It's not cast in stone, and we as educators, we need to be monitoring our students and see how they perform. And of course, I'm not saying major changes. If you do major changes, then that's going to be very disruptive for your class. But maybe minor changes would be acceptable.
That's a very important point, not major changes, but minor changes. Another point, it can be done, but is it considered a good practice?
I wouldn't actually say it's bad, but it is just that I would encourage not to change. If you want to make changes, it should be at the end after one cycle. As we all know that the rubrics here, it's dynamic, it's always changing, and we make improvement after one cycle. That would be best practice. But if you really need to change, what happened to me is that for this class during the first PKP, I had to redo my learning activities because we were prepared for face-to-face. Then after that, we all went for PKP, right? So I had to redo the design of my learning activities, and with that change, the rubrics also changed. So those kind of changes perhaps would be acceptable, but not like any normal days and suddenly you want to change. Students will get very confused.
Okay, wow, we have learned a lot. I have learned a lot myself. Okay, let's pick up another question at 347 from YouTube. How many rating scale are suitable in constructing analytic rubrics?
All right, that question, I wouldn't say that there's a hard rule to how many rating scales. Well, I think the minimum that you can have for me personally would be 3, but I prefer to have between 4 to 5. My rating scales usually I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 would be sometimes, if we have a big group, maybe 5 would be quite tough because you have to read so many skills. Which one would they fall into? Maybe 4 would be good, but anything below 3, I wouldn't recommend. So 3 to 5 would be a good range.
Okay, it's good. Okay, the next one from Dr. Ahmad Lutfi again at 348. In your example for holistic rubrics, let's say the student has less than 14 updated portfolio, but the other criteria are great. What marks can be given based on the rubrics?
They have less than 14 criteria, 14 updates.
Yeah,
I would still give them 1. I would
Mhm.
still give that person 1 because it didn't fulfill the criteria for higher score. But if they have for the reflection, maybe instead of having 14 posts, that person usually maybe did put focus on the post number 3, for example. Then that person or that student would be given good grades or good scores for reflection, for example. That can be done.
Right, Dr. Lutfi, if you want to clarify, feel free to do so. Just unmute the microphone, yeah. Okay, the next one, yeah. Dr. Ahmad Lutfi, you want to say something? No, eh? Okay.
Yes, I just want to know,
Yeah.
because in holistic rubrics, it's kind of combined, right?
Correct. You combine all the performance indicators into one.
Alright, okay. Kalau if you want to clarify further, feel free to email Prof. Wong. I think should be happy to help. But of course, don't expect a prompt reply. I mean,
Be happy to hear from all of you.
yeah, okay. Alamak, bergerak lagi. Sekejap ya. Okay, Wan Nadia. Okay, no, Dr. Nur Nadia at 349. Do we develop our rubric according to the learning outcomes or according to the assessments? For example, if an assessment covers 3 learning outcomes, should we have 1 table or 3 separate tables?
Should the rubrics be designed according to the learning outcome? Well, I think one assignment can make, usually I don't think you will be covering all 3. Let's say you have 3 learning outcomes for your course. Your assignment probably will not cover all 3. You will have a few learning activities, Learning activity number 1 probably cover learning outcome number 1, learning outcome number 2 will be covered by assignment 2. And then when you develop your learning outcome and then you have your learning activity which is aligned to your first learning outcome, then your rubric would cover 1 learning outcome. I think if you have all 3, it will be a mess. Too many, unless you really want to do all 3. I don't think I have designed such rubrics before. It will be quite hard to actually assess your students specifically.
Okay, good. Okay, next one.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
for example, a
Sure.
minor project that covers 60% of the whole marks. So that would cover substantial amount of learning outcomes.
All right. If you have a minor project, I presume that your minor project carries quite a big weightage. Then probably you might cover 2 learning outcome number 1 or outcome number 1 and 2, or outcome number 2 and 3. You may even cover all 3 learning outcomes. Usually from what I see, final year projects would cover all learning outcome in 1 rubric. So the rubric is really massive. I would say that.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Nadia.
So do you suggest to have 1 big table or separate them according to learning outcome?
If you think for management, for us, when we are marking, I would recommend separate tables. If you have a really big table, then you have a few pages. Pages, yeah?
Okay, thank you.
Of your rubrics.
Okay, Dr. Nadia is happy. So the next one at 3:52 from YouTube. When developing a rubric, the most hard thing, okay, the hardest thing is to create a good descriptor to differentiate the level of performance. Is there any tips and tricks how to create a good descriptor?
Okay, good question. You actually have some criteria that the characteristics of a good descriptor. We look at the degree and this degree could be in the form of frequency, intensity, yeah, and depth. These are the 3 things that we consider when we write our performance indicator or performance descriptors. And that will be covered tomorrow. For tomorrow's session, I will tell you, I will show you what are the characteristics of a good descriptor. And I think that will set you off with how to come up with a good descriptor. But it's just that the keyword here would be the degree.
Save the best for the second session. Okay, at 3:55 from YouTube again, coming from the language background, we are exposed to CEFR based rubrics. Would you say that it's a holistic kind of rubric? I don't know whether Prof. Wong familiar with CEFR based rubrics.
I have not seen a CIFR, they call it CIFR, right? I know the language people refer to this standard.
This one, European standard, I think. Yeah.
European standard. I'm sorry, I have not seen how it looks like, so I won't be able to comment whether it's a holistic or an analytic rubric.
Okay. Why not? Or this is the person who asked this question. You can email the example of that CIFR based rubric to Prof. Wong to the email, and maybe tomorrow Prof. Wong can give some comments on that.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea, Prof. Kari.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much. Okay. Okay. All right. No more. Okay, no more questions. Okay. One last question. One last chance to ask questions directly. Anyone? Just one final questions. Count to 3. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I take it as no more questions. All right. Before I end this session, to all participants here who want to get the CPD, for those who doesn't want to have any CPD, no problem. But if you want to have the CPD, please fill up the form with the link given there. Within this form is valid for 20 minutes, I think. Yeah. And if for any reason you don't fill up the form, you will not get the CPD. And I'm sorry, we cannot do any more. I know we cannot award you any CPD if you don't fill up the form. It's very important for us to give this to get this form fill up properly, to get good feedback for the speaker as well. So thank you very much, Prof. Wong. I think within a very short time, I think we have learned a lot. Also through the Q&A, we have learned, additional points there. And I'm sure tomorrow there are a lot more we can learn, especially, how to write good criteria and whatnot. So ladies and gentlemen, my dear colleagues, do not miss this. Make, a point to attend the second one, because if you listen to the recorded one, you will be able to ask a question, and it's different from listening directly to Prof. Wong, our expert here. All right. So Prof. Wong, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for staying on. And we'll see you all again tomorrow. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Selamat berbuka puasa semua ya. Okay, we give a big round
Thank you,
of applause to Prof.
everyone.
Wong. Big round of
Thank you.
applause
Thank
to
you.
Prof. Wong ya.
Thanks, Prof. Karim.
Welcome.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
CDA.
Thank you,
All
Prof.
right. See everybody tomorrow then.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.